so much all for joining our call today. I welcome you to this call on sustainable financing for water funds in Africa. We'll be having 3 presenters today and a Q&A at the end. And as usual, I will encourage all to have all our conversations on chat. If you're not sick of today, and it give you a chance to speak at the end of the call during the questions and answers session. So just a few announcements. It's to mention that we finally have our Swahili and French version of the newsletter available now. This was sent out a few days in February 28th, so kindly check it out and you will be able to see all the updates that we have on other water funds and other source water protection projects that are being available in the Africa region. So apart from that, I would like to congratulate all those who are able to get the Nature-Based Solutions Scholarship together with Cranfield and in partnership with the Nature Conservancy. Congratulations to you all. And again, to mention that in our newsletter, we have a list of what the survey was able to show us. So in terms of what our members are expecting, so you'll be able to see that aspect in there. So kindly I encourage you to check out our French and Swahili versions of the newsletter. So without further ado, we'll go direct to our day's business of today. And we have very high profile presenters today. We have a man of many feet, who is Joshua Irongo, Honorable. He's the next governor of Laikipia County. And also he's the chairman of the Water Services Regulatory Board here in Kenya. He's also the grandfather of water funds, representing Eldoret-Iten Water Fund. So the Eldoret-Iten team, I'm sure you are happy to have one of your own on call today. The other presenter will be Caroline Leas from the Catholic Relief Services, west from Sierra Leone, that is Freetown. And we also have one of our own, Louis Stafford from South Africa, Cape Town. So looking forward to engaging with you. So if you have a question, kindly put it on chat. If you want to make any comment, again, put it on chat. And let us all keep muted until the Q&A session where we'll have a chance to interact with our speakers of today. So, so Joshua, I'm just checking, Honorable Joshua, are you ready? Can I help you share the screen?
I'm ready, Florence, and I'm ready to do the presentation. If you can help me to set the while Florence is setting the slides. I know it will be an active session, and I would wish to welcome all of you for this great discussion today, for the good of this nation and the whole world, in terms of when we are discussing a critical issue. But just to set the climate and the ball rolling, I would want to start by introducing myself, particularly for the people who comes outside like Kenya and the country. And therefore, I want to say Joshua Irongo. Joshua Irongo was the first governor like Laikipia County, and this is following the Constitution of Kenya, 2010, which established about 47 counties in the country, and therefore we have 48 governments, which is one is the national government headed by the president, and the rest are 47 governments, which are headed by the governors, and therefore it happens that I was the first governor for this county, Laikipia County. And again, while I was the chair, while I was the council of governor, in the council of governor for the 48 government, I was also elected as the chair in the water, environment, and natural resources management in that committee, where by that time we did quite a lot, because by the time we were coming on board, the country was managed by the Water Act 2002, and therefore it is during that time when I was the chair that I spearheaded now that the water and sanitation services were devolved, and therefore we were to align ourselves within a new New Water Act. And therefore, we came up with the Water 2016, which I will be speaking towards it later in the course of my presentation. And therefore, this is one of the milestones that I am proud of being the chair, and I managed to bring this country to have the 2016 Water Act, which elaborated really quite a lot in terms of how the national government and the county government can be able to manage water moving forward. Again, while I was at that point, I was also the chair of the Mount Kenya governors. Within the Mount Kenya and Upper Tana, we have 11 counties, and therefore the 11 governors appointed me or elected me to be their chair. And it is during that time that I joined the Upper Tana Nairobi Water Fund, and I supported in terms of its establishment and also implementation and bringing the county government on board, particularly also the building the endowment fund, where the county government were really supporting in a big way. And it is during that time that even after leaving the governorship, I continued supporting the Upper Tana Nairobi Water Fund on a volunteer basis, just to see to it that we are able to meet our expectations. And again, before then, when I left the county government, I was appointed by the president of this country, Kenya, and was appointed to chair one of the major bodies that were established in the Water Act 2016, and this is what we call the National Water Services and Regulatory Board. So I do chair the regulatory body in this country, and this is a very critical body that is bringing sanity in terms of how the water services and sanitation is managed in this country, particularly in the era of devolution. It came at a time when it's critical that now here there are two levels of the government. There is a national government, which used to manage in a centrally approach, managing water across the country. And here is where now the other government have come on board to manage the same and provide water, and particularly where now water services and provision is under the county, while the national government is left to set the policies and do the regulation. And therefore, because of that, that's how the president found it fit to appoint me based on that I was the chair in the Council of Governors. And it is with that I come up from that point, beside being the board of trustee, and I give some insights on how the water services regulatory body can be able to support in the water funds, particularly because it is this body, the WASLEB, that sets the major law of WASLEB is also to protect the interests of the consumers, the interests and the rights of consumers in the provision of water services across the board. And therefore, this is a critical body that it's mandated to set even the tariffs. And this is one of the areas that we'll discuss and give input and open up. I would wish to interact on this of setting the tariffs for sustainable water provision in this country. And therefore, I would want to get into the background. Next, Florence. Part of the background is what I have mentioned, that the regulator's role in the water fund is where the body, the WASLEB, is given the mandate by the Water Act 2016 to determine and prescribe the national standards for the provision of water services and assess development for water services provider. This is the role of WASLEB to ensure that the water that the consumers or the people or the citizens are taking or are consuming, it is of the great standard or the highest standard in terms of the quality of the water, in terms of affordability, that the water must be affordable, and again, in terms of accessibility. This is the role of WASLEB, where I do share. And this is one of the greatest things that we as a country, we have been having challenges in terms of having many of our people currently the water services coverage is still very low. We have not gone to the expectations that are at by 2020, where we were supposed to be. At the moment, we are standing at 53% of the water coverage in this country. And therefore, we still have a long way to go. And this is where the WASREB is coming on board to bring each and every person on board. And in terms of legal handles, is where we are talking of that we still have inadequate policies where the WASREB is taking lead in coming up with the legal standards, and particularly the policies that harness now the private partnership, particularly in terms of funding. And this is one of the challenges that we have been having, that we end up finding there is a huge crisis in terms of water conflicts that arise within the regions, because there are people in the watershed who protects the water, manages and conserve the water. But again, you end up finding that that water resource or that good has gone to be consumed in another neighborhood, particularly when we are addressing Eldoret and when we are addressing the Nairobi. But that means there are people who up there in the watershed areas, in the water catchment areas, who are protecting, who are managing, who are conserving day to day, and but they some cases that they don't benefit. And this is the reason why we as WASREB nationally, we are embracing the water funds that will bring the people together, the various stakeholders, private investors, the public, to come and see the need of protecting and supporting the people in the watershed areas, so that they are able also to manage and also be able to improve their livelihood, and as well as try to protect those catchments, so that the people downstream are able to consume quality water, standard water, and again also reduce the sediments along the way. And therefore, there is also the issue of evaluating and recommend water and sewerage tariffs to the county water service provider. This is what we are calling the water service providers. What we have at the moment, the number that we have about 98 regulated water service providers in the country. And this is when we talk about Nairobi. An example is Nairobi Water Company. Another one is Eldoret, and there is Iten Water Company. And therefore, when this water fund comes on board, is to help those water companies to be able to provide water, quality water, and affordable water at all the times. And therefore, and this is one of the law that WASREB is coming on board. In terms of the mandate of WASREB, WASREB comes on board, particularly setting the tariffs. It is the responsibility of WASREB when during the public participation, because they involve the water service provider, they must be given a license to provide water services, as much as the water service provider or water provision is a county government function. But in terms of regulating that, in terms of being given the license to provide water to the community or to the citizen, is mandated and is given, that mandate is upon the WASREB to give license. And when we are giving the license, there are the license terms and conditions that the water service provider must provide or must adhere to. And therefore, for me, from my end, the WASREB is coming on board to help these in terms of when licensing and even when setting the tariffs to our people. Again, all this is driven by due to the high demand for food and energy, which when it is there, it exerts a lot of pressure on our water resources. And this is what we exactly realizing along the way. In our watershed areas, there is a lot of pressure on water resources. There is the competition in terms of the water uses, in terms of agriculture, in terms of consuming, in terms of, and therefore it calls upon protecting water supplies at source, to increase critical and to ensure that the water security of cities. And this is critical for lands to be able to provide and to have sustainable water supplies into the cities. There must be a lot of effort, joint effort from all corners to ensure that the watershed areas are protected. And therefore, I would want to also highlight that the funding for watershed conservation may come from a variety of sources. And this is where we are talking of long-term guaranteed finance needed for the sources to continue to protect those areas. And this is where we are calling upon the various stakeholders, the public and the private, to get to that. And we did identify the Eldoret-Iten Water Fund. And this is where we are playing a great role. Particularly, we want to use Eldoret-Iten as a case study that can be used to be replicated in other potential water floods areas, that we can be able to do that. And again, we want also to use this case study of Eldoret-Iten Water Fund to help this nation to develop a policy. And even in the regional, the East African communities, and even worldwide, to have a policy or to have a case study that we can be able to learn, where we can have water services, sustainable water service provision to our people. And therefore, some of the areas that we are our top priorities in this regard, in terms of Iten, Eldoret Water Fund, is replanting and conserving indigenous natural forest and improving plantation for forest management. This is one of the key areas, and this is where the tariffs, when we are setting the tariffs, when the Eldoret Water Company is applying for tariff, they do include a component, a certain percentage that will be plowed back into conserving these natural forests, so that they can have continuous water supply. And this again, the activities that will be done in the watershed areas, they will still be conserving the soil and water through good agricultural practices, agroforestry and riparian, along the wetland and also the wetland restoration. All this is geared to reducing the sediments in the downstream. Again, the other, through the water fund, there will be also support, and this is out of the public participation that was there. And people highlighted, the people living in the watershed areas, highlighting that they can also have bee and poultry keeping. They can have dairy goats rearing, for farm pods, that this is for fish pods. And they can also have high value crop production. This is more of a tree crop that will also play a great role in conserving the soil and the water catchment areas. Again, there will still be some other inputs on the value chain development out of the forest product that we'll be getting, out of the high value fruit trees that will be there. There would be that component of value addition. And again, there will be also a big component on household energy improvement. Because the moment we don't take this, again, as much as we still continue protecting the forest, people, they have to cook, they have to eat, and therefore they will be going for the source of energy from the forest. And therefore, there will be a major component in terms of household energy, alternative household energy improvement, so that the people don't go harvest the forest and all that for their cooking. And again, and in doing this, there will be a governance structure, because one of the things that we have realized as WASRE is not that there hasn't been inadequate water resources, but in terms of the governance is a major component. And therefore, this is why we are calling of the Eldoret Water Fund, that a government structure will be a major component to build up, so that we can have sustainable management of the water resources. Can we proceed next? In terms of, through this innovation, when we talk about this innovation of putting the resources together and having these people investing all that much, we need to also ask ourselves, is it worth this investment? What are kind of the benefits are we going to have? Eldoret or Eldoret Waters and Sanitation Company is going to benefit from these innovations. One, we have demonstrated through giving some examples out of the study that was done, the feasibility study that was done, that in the water fund, Eldoret Water Fund, there are 5 dams that are within that region. And these are the 5 dams that supply water to Eldoret. These are the 5 dams that also supply part of water to Iten. And that's why we are referring Eldoret and Iten Water Fund, because they rely on the same catchment. And therefore, out of these 5 dams, part of the cost recovery, when we set the tariffs, there is much of the tariff, the tariff that we set, much of that goes for cost recovery in terms of operation and maintenance, in terms of the water excavation, in terms of cleaning the water and all that. And therefore, this is what the high cost that have been through the reduction of sediments we are going to be saving quite a lot in terms of dollars. We are talking of about over $600,000 that are going to be per year that are going to be saved through these interventions. And therefore, this is why we are advocating, and this is why, as a national regulator, we are coming on board to support this, provided the support, particularly in setting and approving the tariff. Because by doing this, even while the WASREB is mandated to protect the interests and the rights of the consumers, when we set the tariffs, the public must participate and approve also those tariffs. Because here, for it to be affordable, we don't encourage quite a huge tariff, because that goes back to the consumer, and therefore the consumer, at the end of the day, he or she, they might not be able to access the water, and therefore they might end up going to the dams to fetch the water, that water in the dams and other unwanted places. And therefore, we must make sure that these water companies provide clean, adequate, and affordable water. And therefore, by setting these, by these interventions, the innovations and of the investment in this water fund, it is going to reduce even the cost of water provision to the consumers. And this is an example of how that can be applied. And this is out of the feasibility study. Next. In terms of the tariff approach, I know I have mentioned along the way on how the water tariffs are designed, that they are designed to recover the cost for providing water and sanitation services. And this is already the mandate of WASREB. And how it is done is it is initiated by the water company when they realize what cost would they need in terms of meeting the water service provision to their people. And therefore, when it is initiated, it comes to us as WASREB. And then again, we push it back to the public, where we engage the public to have a clear understanding that this is a tariff that, one, to meet the cost. And again, also is not so pressing to the community. And this is to ensure proper services and delivery, maintenance of existing infrastructure. That's part of the tariff, why the tariff is set. I mentioned about the cost recovery. And in terms of the global, water rates do not include all the costs. And this is for sure, that there are some other hidden costs that are never, they don't service when when the rates are being developed. And some on various occasions, the costs include environmental costs of conserving the watersheds that regulate supply and water quality to ensure supply is sustainable. And this is again where our WASREB comes on board as a national regulator. Because when we talk about water services, but again, we cannot forget the water resource, where the water is coming from. And therefore, we have another body called authority called WARA, that is the Water Resource Authority, that are supposed also to regulate the water resources and manage the water resources. But again, we do work together because this is very critical, that if we don't set some tariffs, because in many cases, the water company, because of trying to reduce the cost of the tariff, they fed the money or the funds to the cost to do the conservation. And this is where we interrogate the license or the tariff when you are giving the tariff, because it has to be included. They have to include in terms of conserving the water catchment areas. And this is one of the areas that if WASREB is not there, then you end up finding our water catchment areas is not well protected. And therefore, in 2020, WASREB and Eldoret considered this innovative new tariff structure for Eldoret. And at the moment, there is a tariff that we have set and approved for them as an initial tariff that can be able to conserve the watershed areas of the Eldoret. And it is through this that moving on, we'll be able to set the same for Nairobi, where it's now working, and again for other areas like in the Nairobi, Mombasa, the potential areas like Mombasa, who is coming very soon. And again, internationally, we'll be able to influence on how the other national water regulators, they can borrow a leaf from Kenya. And that's why we are aggressive, and we would want to set this policy and the tariff learning well, and particularly for Eldoret-Iten Water Fund. It is one of the babies, or one of the innovative that we want to really follow it up to the edge, so that it can be able to be applied as a case study. How will the tariff work? the water fund created that Eldoret-Iten Water Fund, as I have mentioned, and the fund has been developed portfolio of priority interventions for the first 3 years, and this will be very key to follow it up in terms of how the tariff is applied, particularly the tariff for conservation. How are we applying this tariff in terms of protecting the watershed? What benefit is going to the people that are doing that work of protecting the catchment? Because these are the people, probably they might not be necessarily the people who are taking the water, because they are in the watershed areas and the water is going downstream. So upstream, we would want to see this, how this tariff is going to help those people, particularly improving their livelihoods. And particularly for us, the tariff will also is dedicated to help get faster and matching resources to other donors to come on board, as well as for capitalizing and endowment for future activities, and again for future sustainability of Eldoret Water Fund. Next. There are some of the learning experiences that we can also apply, and we are not we are happy as WASREB, and particularly myself, who have also gone to Lima, and there are a number of things that we picked and we can be able to incorporate in now when we are developing our policy, and therefore 1%, like for example, if we give an example of how Lima in Peru is doing, that 1% of revenue invested in natural infrastructure, which was critical. And here is where with the Eldoret, we were talking about 2%. Can we start with 2%? And then we can upgrade as we move on. Then there are 3.5% average for disaster mitigation and climate change adaptation. And for Lima, this represents an estimated of $25 US dollars and $82 million respectively for the next 5 years. This is for the invested in natural infrastructure as well as mitigation and climate change. So this is a major component because we are in life of the climate change, and actually the country is also experiencing those challenges in terms of climate change. And this is a high time again that the water service providers across the country must incorporate when setting the tariff, when requesting for the tariffs, they must show how are they addressing the climate change within their region for continuous supply of water services. So what are the next steps? Our next steps as a regulator, as well as all of us, is to take lessons from Eldoret-Iten Water Fund and mainstream them in our all 5 largest water utilities. This is a major component that we are intending, and our major water utilities in this country, we have Nairobi, and we have Mombasa, and then we have Kisumu, and again we have the Nyeri, the Mount Kenya regions. These are some of our largest water utilities that provide water, and therefore we can the lessons that we take out of the Eldoret-Iten Water Fund, it's going to be applied in the rest of the other water utilities. Again, we are going to, in terms of scaling up, we are going to develop a national policy and guidance on tariff funding of conservation efforts and accountability. And this is where we want to partner so much with the Nature Conservancy and also again with the Upper Tana and Nairobi Water Fund, and see what lessons have we learned across the board. Like now that we have the Nairobi Water Fund, what lessons are there? On it in terms of we can inform the national governmental agencies, we'll be able to develop a national policy that will be able to guide this country. And again, in terms of convening the regional forums for water and power regulators to discuss possible implication, this is where we are talking about the East African communities, where we as national regulators have a forum on their own, where they discuss and exchange some experiences and share some best practices on how to regulate water services provision in their country. And again, we also want to track and report effectively the effectiveness of how this policy, how these innovations are going on. And again, now we also coming up and proposing that can we reward some of our good performers, and let it be in the public, let it be known that this water utility is performing well, in terms of addressing their issue, water provision, not only at the tap, but all the way from the source. This is what the indicators of determining that this is one of the best performing water utility is because they are able to conserve the water from the source and all the way, and they ensuring that at the tap, people are taking quality, good, affordable water. So those are our next steps and that we intended to do. And I think I would want to stop there to save time for other presenters, but I'm readily available to engage further. This is a discussion that is so interesting, and particularly from the point of view as a regulator, and again, being the grandfather to Eldoret-Iten Water Fund, which I'm passionate about it, to see to it that it performs well, it comes up well, starting from the endowment fund, going all the way to conserving and improving the livelihoods of the people at the catchment level. Otherwise, asante sana, gracious, and merci.
Thank you so much, Honorable Joshua. That was a great presentation. In case you're wondering what is a grandfather term means in terms of water funds, you can drop your question in the chat and get him answer on that. And if you're a water regulator or a water company in your country, you can also ask questions in case you would like such a model to work for your source water protection project. So we are going to the next presenter, who is Caroline Leas from Freetown, Eldoret Relief Services. So Caroline, are you ready? Should I share your presentation or you'll be able to do that?
Yes, Florence, I'm ready. Please share the presentation. And hello, everyone. It's really a pleasure to join everyone and share some of the evidence that we've been gathering here in Freetown as we work towards setting up the Western Area Peninsula Water Fund.
Yeah, I'm putting up the screen right now. Let me know if you can see it.
I can see it, Florence. If you could just maximize it, I think we're good. Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much, Florence. Yes, again, hello everyone, and yeah, a pleasure to be with you here today. I will be sharing a bit of the evidence that we've been developing here for the Western Area Peninsula Water Fund, and focusing specifically on one of the interventions of our business case, which is co-financing through carbon credits. Next slide, Florence, please.
Yes, apologies.
No problem.
I think my computer is a bit excited having you all on call.
Great, fantastic. So Freetown, so the Western Area Peninsula comprises of Freetown, which is the capital of Sierra Leone, as well as the peri-urban and rural communities surrounding it. And the Western Area Peninsula is under severe threats from accelerating deforestation. Over the past 50 years, the population of Freetown increased by almost tenfold, when the natural forest cover of the Western Area Peninsula has declined by about 70%. As you can see on the maps on the right-hand side, the area with the red demarcation, I'm not sure if you can see it, it's not so bright, but Florence, I don't know if you can maybe scroll over it, but yes. That is essentially the boundary of the Western Area Peninsula National Park, where most of the catchments that provide up to 90% of water supply to Freetown is located. And so this is the area that's currently under threat from rapid deforestation. And according to estimates of the business case report that was done, by 2050, 5,000 hectares of the forest within the Western Eyre Peninsula National Park will be lost. So this is a significant threat facing the almost 2 million people living in Freetown and within the peninsula as well. Next slide, please.
Yeah. So Karen, are you able to share? Looks like my computer is active.
Yes, no problem. Let me quickly see if I can share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Okay. This rapid deforestation is leading to significant water shortages. At present, the average daily output of Guma Valley Water Company, which is the utility company supplying water to Freetown and the country, is approximately 70,000 cubic meters per day, which is just over half of the estimated average daily demand. And only 3% of residents in Freetown have access to piped indoor drinking water. 39% of households rely on public taps, and 25% of the city's population do not have any access to an improved water source. So this obviously has widespread implications in terms of health, economic development, and also gender considerations as well, since girls and women spend most of the time fetching water. So in addition to this water shortage, the rapid deforestation is also leading to increased exposure to flooding and landslides. In 2017, Freetown experienced one of the worst disasters in its recent history, with over 1,000 people killed in a mudslide. So these events are also going to become more intense and frequent as a result of climate change and the rapid deforestation that we're seeing if that is not controlled. Additionally, the Western Eyre Peninsula National Park is home to an important a great number of birds and mammal species, particularly the endangered primus species such as the western chimpanzee, which has now been declared the national animal for Sierra Leone. And so by destructing the habitats of these important species, we're obviously endangering these species, but also Sierra Leone, which is aiming to focus its economic development on tourism, is also losing revenues. And so these are some of the challenges that we're seeing on the ground and that the Water Fund is trying to tackle. So in 2019, CRS, Catholic Relief Services, in partnership with the Nature Conservancy, as well as our partners here in government, which include the Freetown City Council locally, and at the national level, the Ministry of Water Resources and the National Water Resource Management agencies, we joined forces to explore the feasibility of a water fund as a solution to address this issue of rapid deforestation and water shortages and other challenges that I've mentioned. So we're very happy to see that the Western Eyre Peninsula is the Water Fund is making progress, and we are now officially on the map. In terms of the journey so far, we are still in the design phase. We just completed our business case reports around November of last year, and this was now presented to stakeholders in January and validated by stakeholders, and now had official endorsement. So we are now moving forward with a number of activities which will help us sort of pivot from design to creation. We're setting up the governance structure for the Water Fund. We're also starting to look at how we can put in place a fundraising strategy Yeah, I'm very eager to hear from the Cape Town team as well, since I know that's what they'll be presenting today, and we're right behind them trying to see how we can develop one for Freetown and the Western area. So this is where we are. So far, we haven't made progress in terms of implementation, but we'll be sharing more. I'll be sharing more on the evidence that's come out of the business case. So the business case report shows that it is economically feasible to have a water fund, and in the long term, there are some clear benefits for a number of stakeholders. The analysis demonstrates that a total of $20 million of investments in the protection and restoration of the critical ecological infrastructure in this national park will generate a return of $55 million in benefits over a 30-year time frame. So in other words, every $1 invested into this water fund is expected to generate at least $2.7 worth of benefits to stakeholders. So that's quite a strong, that's quite a high return on investment, and a clear sign that this is a solution that is cost effective and will have clear benefits in the long term. In terms of the interventions that we are looking at, the business case proposes one, to look at the effective protection of the national park. Right now, enforcement and protection of the park is quite weak. So as part of this intervention area, we're looking at increasing training rangers, increasing the number of rangers, looking at a different management for the national park, maybe exploring how we can look at a public-private partnership to better manage the park, such as the models that we're seeing in different African countries, such as the African Park Management Model. Also looking at fencing as a potential tool for protecting the park, because the park is really close to Freetown, and it's under a lot of pressure from rapid urbanization. So that's one area of intervention. We're looking at forest restoration as well as another intervention, which would combine a number of solutions such as active restoration, assisted natural regeneration, and passive regeneration to restore the forests of the Western Area Peninsula. The third intervention area that we are looking at is installing an agroforestry buffer zone, not around the entire park, but specifically looking at targeting areas where there is a significant illegal activity. And so we would have this buffer zone as a way to generate sustainable livelihoods for communities surrounding the park, and allowing a number of activities to take place there, so that they can generate incomes from the park. And then another intervention area would be to establish a riparian buffer zones, especially in areas where along rivers that have been significantly degraded. Another intervention would be looking at co-financing through carbon credits. So this is where I wanted to focus on today a little bit more, and also enabling interventions. So working closely with communities, doing advocacy, social campaigns to change behaviors essentially. And that's actually quite an important area of the work, to ensure that there is effective protection of the park and that we're able to enforce that. In terms of the co-financing through carbon credits, the business case suggests that there's a really good case here for creating or launching a reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation project, a REDD+ project, which could have a mitigation potential ranging from 57,000 tons of CO2 equivalents to 124,000 tons of CO2 equivalents per year. So there was already a study that was conducted in 2012 that showed that a REDD+ project could be feasible within the Western Area Peninsula National Park. And currently we're seeing that the average carbon offsets price in Africa is around $4 per tons of CO2 equivalent. So based on this average cost, there's a potential of around 239 $1,000 to over $520,000 per year to generate additional revenues for conservation intervention. So this would be in addition to all of the, the typical water fund resource pulling solutions from public and private sector. So this is an additional avenue that we would like to explore for financing. And there's a clear opportunity here because there's already a RED Plus project in Sierra Leone at Gola. And this is a project that was established in 2012 for 30 years with the objective of preserving over 68 hectares of tropical forest and providing livelihood support to 114 communities that surround the Gola Rainforest National Park, which is located in the eastern part of the country. This project has already been certified under the CCB and VCS standard system, which is some of the key standards for carbon offset markets, and it's been generating carbon credit sales for 4 years. Although it's not been significant, it has managed to generate these carbon sales. And so the idea here for the Western Area Peninsula would be to really build on the successes of the Gola RED project and look at how we could potentially create a project for the whole of Sierra Leone, a national project, because one of the challenges with the RED projects, as you might know, is this issue of leakage, where by protecting one specific area, we could be just displacing the issue of deforestation to other parts. And so in order to reduce that, and rather than having multiple RED projects across the country, the idea here would be to have one at the national level to help generate funding, co-financing through carbon credits. And so that's one pathway that we would like to explore moving forward. So yes, as I mentioned, one of the next steps would be exploring that opportunity of establishing a national RED program for Sierra Leone, and also designing and implementing a fundraising strategy for the Western Area Peninsula. So this will come as we're also developing the governance system for the Water Fund, and we will, I think, have more tangible ideas of what are the other resources that we can pull from both public sector, such as the utility, and also private sector actors to fund the Water Fund. So these will be the two options that we're looking at right now in terms of financing for the Western Area Peninsula Water Fund. Thank you so much. Over to you, Florence.
Thank you so much, Caroline, for the great presentation. We really appreciate you have also kept time. So next we'll go to Louise Stafford from the Greater Cape Town Water Fund in South Africa. Louise, are you ready? We can see your screen, Louise, but I can't hear you. Louise, not sure we can hear you.
She's on mute, Florence.
Louise, kindly, are you able to unmute yourself? Yeah, you unmuted now, but still can't hear you. Okay. So I think, Fred, maybe we can take one of the questions as Louise gets her mic up. If you're able to give our first question.
Thank you very much, Florence. If you can hear me, I'll go straight. So I must thank all the people who continue to put questions on chat. And I'll probably only do two quick ones, and then we can go back to Luis. Honorable Governor Joshua Irugu, if you're there, these questions are for you. And one of them is from Dr. Kagobe, who would like to know whether it is possible to mainstream farmer support to include conservation investments for both the national governments and devolved county governments in Kenya. Is this something that can work so that incentives are part and parcel or of what farmers get? If you can answer that, I'll give you another one. Honorable Joshua.
Thank you, Fred and Dr. Kagombe for that question. I would say that it is doable and it is possible to provide incentives. And what part of the provision of the incentive through the water fund, I see it as what water fund does to the catchment area or watershed, the people who are living upstream. Part of it in terms of improving their livelihoods, in terms of the provision of tree crop, where the communities, the farmers can also be able to harvest and have some income out of that intervention. For me, I consider it as an incentive to these communities who are protecting and managing the watershed areas. Besides that, I know with KEFRI and other partners and also other civil society, we can also develop this concept of a carbon sequestration, where communities can also be able to get carbon credit out of the interventions of tree planting in terms of the tree crop that they plant. And therefore, for me, and particularly being that I used to be the director, the country director for TIST, the International Small Group and Tree Planting Program that was geared to carbon sequestration, and communities benefited from carbon credit. It is doable, it is possible.
Do I shoot? No, Luis, are you ready? Or I shoot one more question?
I think, Fred, you can go to another question.
Okay, I'll move. Thank you very much. So, Honorable Joshua, again, we have a question from Aaron Budi, and it is allowed whether this would benefit by addressing a bit of agricultural farmlands runoff, and whether that reducing of the chemicals and eventually fertilizer use and turning more to organic farming would be beneficial. And that goes also with another question from Philip Dako, who is also asking whether if you could invest more in this natural infrastructure, is it a smarter way of investing as opposed to reserving much more money for climate change mitigation? Joshua?
I would say that those are good comments, particularly more additional money in terms of the national infrastructure, where tariffs can be set. But this goes hand in hand with the request that comes from the specific areas. Like, for example, if we talk about Eldoret-Iten Water Fund, much of that is it is possible so that the communities can also benefit, and as well as it will enhance the protection of those areas. And again, also in terms of areas, agriculture, in terms of chemicals and all that, I know the high cost because when we are setting the tariffs is more meant for cost recovery. And therefore, the high cost in terms of cleaning up, in terms of moving the various chemicals in the water, I know that's a huge cost. And therefore, if we can be able to protect that, and I know it is through this innovation of water fund, what they do in terms of the conservation of the ecosystem upward, that cleans up naturally. The water gets into the river when it is clean, so reduced sediments because of the soil and water conservation activities that are practiced through the water fund. I'm sure that will address so much of soil erosion, so much of the chemicals getting into the river, because again, in terms of the good agricultural practices, is where through the water fund, through the extension staff that are that are engaged by the water fund, that they do advocate of not much of the use of the organic fertilizers, the artificial fertilizers, and therefore they go for more of organic farming. And the best practices, particularly in soil and water conservation, are in the catchment areas.
Thank you, Governor. Caroline, there's a question for you from Chris, and I'll be giving you a chance to answer quickly. I just want to ask Joshua, being a grandfather of a water fund, I think should be the one to answer the question from Philip there about how the issue of equity is ensured when you are developing a water fund at the design and implementation stage, both on the demand side, but also on the supply. Just talk about equity. And if you can combine that with a question from Kezi, who wants to know, for those who totally don't get water from the treated urban water supply system, what are the options for getting some water so that they can remain alive? Joshua?
Let me start with the last one. Because when we talk about a water scarce country, you'd imagine that water is life. That's the bottom line. Water is life, and therefore, because people have to have water to drink, so when they don't get the treated water, the options that they do have is walk to the dams or go and get water, and they compete in terms of the water consumption with the donkeys and animals and livestock, and therefore they end up drinking polluted water, and therefore, what are the consequences? Is waterborne diseases, and again, the other consequences is the cost of the high cost in terms of the household because of the treatments, good health, and all that. And therefore, for me, the issue of addressing in terms of other alternatives is where, through the water fund, comes to address that. As for me, I consider it as an incentive. When we clean up, when we do all those innovations in the catchment and make sure that the water is clean, just along the way, still even the dams that takes the water to Nairobi or to Eldoret and to the others, still some of the communities get water from there. So if they end up getting clean water from even those dams, through the soil and water conservation measures, through forest restoration and all that, I know that by the end of the day, all the people will end up benefiting. But actually, this is one of the major issues that with WASREP, because as per now, we only have 98 water companies that are regulated. And these are mainly in the urban areas, in the cities. But actually, in the rural areas, people end up going to the water ponds that are within their area, or water dams that are within their area, or with their shallow wells, which are also, we are not sure of the quality of water. But actually with the WASREP now, we are moving up another higher level of trying to, we have developed the regulations on how we are going to engage the rural and regulate the rural water schemes, so that we ensure that in the country, if each and every person, his rights and interest in terms of taking quality water, affordable, is met. So that's clear on that.
Okay, I'll take one more question and then I'll say go back to Florence.
Frederick, yes, do you want me to answer the question around equity maybe?
Yeah, you can answer about equity and also proceed on with the question from Christophe, please. Caroline?
Okay, yes, I think there are a number of, yes, can you hear me?
Very well.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. Yes, I think on equity, a number of things. First of all, one of the clear benefits of the water fund that comes out when we did the modeling from the business case report is that we'll have around 11 cubic meter of water available to households during the dry season months. So this is really crucial because currently we have too much water during the rainy season and very little water during the dry season. And those who are particularly affected by this are poor households. So this would actually result in an annual cost saving to poor households of more than almost close to $436,000 US. So that's one first way that we're addressing the issue of equity. I think the second way will be through the governance system, ensuring that community organizations are really represented and have a voice in the governance system that we will establish, and involving them in the design of the different interventions that will come forward. So I just wanted to also add that the business case is looking at different options and their potential benefits and costs But you're right, there is a lot more work that needs to be done in the next phase as we think of implementation, looking at bringing all of those interventions to the ground. How do we actually implement them in partnership with communities, and which communities actually benefit or not? So this is work that needs to be done as part of the next phase. Yeah, so I'll just maybe, just the last point on equity and livelihood options. I think the main way that this is also being addressed in the business case is through the agroforestry buffer zone, which will provide, the idea here is really to intentionally integrate sustainable, environmentally suitable trees and shrubs that could be used for crop farming, such as like fruits and fuel woods and timber and other things that could help generate livelihoods for communities. And there was a question around whether we do have instruments legally to help with these buffer zones. I think the instruments are there, but maybe enforcement is what's lacking. And so that's why the agroforestry buffer zone actually is going to be implemented in area where there's already been encroachments. There isn't, in some places, there isn't much of a buffer zone to protect, but it's going into the places where there has been already some kind of encroachment or illegal activity, and focusing more on those areas to see how we can generate incomes for communities in the surrounding area of the park. Over to you, Fred.
Fred, I think you're not on mute.
Okay, thank you. I know Louise was restarting her laptop, so once she comes on board, let me know, Florence. But just want to, I think I'll give Caroline one more opportunity to answer a number of questions. I've seen the comment by Ayub that's were taken there. And then there's quite some interest about incentives and whether we're implementing. Margaret would like to know whether the whole thing is to model allow the payment for ecosystem service. So I'm coming back to you on that. Caroline, if you can combine with an answer to question to Kezi on the forest communities there, if there is possibility to reduce offset or give incentives that reduce forest degradation by communities by giving them alternative sources of livelihood, because you have the best of this scenario, because it's not just community, it's a whole city, it's right next to the forest, and people even want a place to put up homes, but there's only forest that's available. Caroline, some responses?
Yeah, I will attempt to answer that question. I think my understanding is that within the national park, we were not able to look at payment for ecosystems, because this is a national protected park, and so that's why the RED program is focusing, is looking at co-financing at within the national park, and then the payments for ecosystem are really coming in play when we're looking at the agroforestry buffer zones, and looking at how we can have really holistic programs focused on agroforestry that would help generate incomes, build capacity for farmers. There are farming communities along the boundary who are already active, and so building their capacity and providing training and working with those communities to generate alternative additional livelihoods or some more sustainable livelihoods. Yeah, I think that's what I can say about the payments for ecosystem services. That's really focused on the agroforestry buffer zone for now.
Okay. I'm just checking if Chris Tut, who had talked about a program that's selling some lead credits already in the market. I'm checking if Chris, you're there.
Yes,
if I give you a minute and a half, can you just tell people about the design of the project and what is possible in the red market?
Sure. I'm advisor to the Chulu Hills Red Plus project, and we started selling credits in 2017. The model suggests that we'll generate about 600 to 650,000 credits a year. We've had some quite good sales. And Caroline, we're doing sort of things in reverse to you. We've developed the RED project for the Chulu Hills, which is also a critical aquifer for the city of Mombasa through Mzima Springs and the Mzima pipeline. And we're now trying to add another layer of payment for ecosystem services with a water fund, with a water PES, and we're going to be nesting that inside TNC's efforts to lead the development of the Mombasa Water Fund, since that's critical. And my sort of comment to you was, I think you're absolutely right to pursue a larger vision for RED, because 57,000 credits a year is extremely small, and both the development costs for a RED project and the ongoing verification costs are pretty high. And I doubt that that would be financially viable in terms of a standalone RED project. That's just a comment. And if you ever want to get in contact and discuss kind of what we've done, I'm very happy to do that.
Thank you, Chris. Now, Florence, I'll give it back to you. Florence, I think Luis is set. So it's time, and I thank everybody for staying with us to the end of the call. We'll have another round of questions.
Thank you, Fred. Go ahead, Luis. Luis, can you check whether your keyboard mic is muted? So sorry, we can't hear you. Okay, Fred, maybe we can take one more question as I work it out with Luis.
Thank you very much, and feel free to interrupt me in a moment if you have any other question. I have Simon Duo who had asked a question. I might ask Simon to unmute himself and ask his question there, and quickly, Simon, and then we can get it responded to by Honorable Joshua. If Simon, you can unmute yourself quickly, and then followed by Boniface after Simon is done. Don't have Simon anymore. Boniface?
Fred, can you hear me?
We can hear you well. Proceed.
How are you, everybody? I was
Very well.
trying to assist with some information on whether we could, it's possible to combine community resources with the public to for conservation or for sustainable livelihoods. And I've said we have done this before and is already ongoing, still in Upper Tana, not on a pilot basis, but on a full-scale basis. It is possible and it works very well. We have even developed a manual, that's what I was trying to say, to guide this so that the communities become, they remain focused, and you also go around the challenges that come with this implementing programs of this kind. Especially, it is very difficult to identify which communities and so this manual was basically to make sure that the program remains on focus and you are able to meet your targets that you have already done. I think the issue of pests, I want to comment something on the issue of pests. I think a water fund is a good example of implementing a pest, because the difficulty is running and managing that scheme, the pest scheme, especially making sure that those who do the conservation get the reward, and those who use the conservation results, benefits, also contribute to the cost of this conservation. So water funds are really a good example of how to implement PES without necessarily saying you're implementing a PES scheme. Fred?
Thank you very much, Boniface. And that also goes to the question by Mpanha on how do you actually incentivize those who are upstream? And the governor just explained how the city is raising some money to be invested upstream. I don't know whether, Governor, you are there and whether you've seen that question from Mpanha. Mpanha, are you there, or can I ask you to ask you a question again? Mpanha, PC, are you there? Governor Irugu, if you can see, the question is about how do you incentivize those who live upstream to invest in conservation, given they are victims of poor agricultural practices also, and probably inadequate agricultural extension service. Honorable Joshua, are you there?
Yeah, Fred, thank you. And thank you for the question. I think this is just to emphasize on what I had mentioned earlier, that even based on what we call payment for ecosystem services, this goes hand in hand with what the communities are benefiting in the upstream. And the beauty of the water funds, according to my interpretation, is to come and fill that gap which has been lacking in this country, and in not only the country, Kenya, but in many of the other countries. This is lacking. That disconnect that has been there, that there are people who are people concentrate more at the top to ensure that people are getting water, but the people who are doing more like in quotes, they don't work in terms of ensuring that the water continues flowing downstream. They never get the benefit, and to some extent, you end up finding that they even don't have the water. They only conserve the water, they protect the water, but at the end of the day, they don't get that water. It goes downstream. And therefore, for me, I see water fund as one of the vehicles that is coming to address those water conflicts and even the water crises that have been there by providing the incentives. And part of the incentives that I'm talking about is improving their livelihoods in terms of extension services, in terms of the various training that they offer, in terms of even provision of alternative tree crop, because many are the times that you end up finding in those, because they are more of fertile areas. They do the tomatoes, the potatoes, they do those kind of the maize growing and all that, which are really, their profit margin is very small, and therefore they end up opening other unwanted areas or other unecological, not well agricultural arable land, but they end up forcing agriculture in some of those areas because of trying to increase the income from the small unit from the bigger unit of farming unit, but through the water fund, they're able to provide other alternative tree crop where the community are able to increase their income from a small unit in terms of in farming. And therefore, for me, those are some of the incentives that are more direct incentives that people can foresee and see. Again, in terms of provision of water, there are some of the areas that with the partnership with the county government, because this is also important, that the county government is coming also, and many are the areas that they have signed the memorandum of understanding, because from the understanding that water services and sanitation provision is at the county government, and therefore the county government comes hand in hand in terms of what the water funds are doing in terms of protecting the watershed areas so that there could be continuous water supply. And therefore, through the county, the water fund might not be doing so much of the infrastructure, but the county government can come and do the boreholes, or they can do other things, while the water fund can be able to provide the other natural infrastructure. They can be able to do the forest infrastructure, the forest restoration, the tree crop, while the other partners and other NGO, other civil society organization can do probably, they play the other role. But all this is geared towards improving or giving incentive to the farming communities that are staying and doing their agriculture in the upstream or in the catchment areas. Back to you, Fred.
Thank you. And looks like we've been saving the best for last. So I hope you can continue being with us. I think Luis is now here with us. So Luis, perhaps a ticket to Cape Town would be a good way to edit. Take it away. Florence, can you hear Ruiz? I'm sure I can hear something happening on her desk, but I'm not quite hearing her on her mic. Maybe she could unplug her mic and speak directly to the computer.
Yeah, Luis, you could hear some noise from your side, so meaning one of your mics are working, whether the dial in or the computer. So can you try speaking up? Luis? Okay. So I think if we are having trouble with Luis, I think we can give her a slot for the next webinar, and we continue with the interactive session of questions and answers. So this is good for us. So kindly put your questions in the chat. Keep them coming. We have another 15 minutes for you. So kindly do that. And if you want to ask your question live, kindly type R on the chat. Fred, kindly continue with the Q&A.
Yeah, I can assure you the next call will be fireworks. If Luis goes to that team, and I think we're also getting the president of Nairobi coming to that call, it will be fireworks. But let's continue. Honorable Joshua, I had put a question there on chat, basically asking you if you mentioned that you would like some support extended to create policy tools within various countries. And my question was, how good is your platform for regulators, particularly in the African region? Is it a platform that people who are in this call could work with you to connect to them and link them with their in-country regulators so that they make the rules and the guidelines and get them adopted in their countries so that they can be applicable? I'll come back to you after Simon asks his question on that one. So Simon, are you there for your question? And I have this as Simon. I don't know who Simon it is. Is this Simon Duo or is this Simon O? Who had a question?
I think it was Simon Duo. Kindly unmute yourself if you want to ask the question on air. Simon, you're on mute.
Okay, thanks. I thought it was definitely another Simon. My question was because, okay, the business cases look very attractive, but is there any example of where after some time, maybe 3, 5, or even 7 years, the fund has been able to run itself without additional input, either from government or donor or external intervention to keep it running? Is there a situation where it has been able to run itself, like Apatana, Nairobi Water Fund, or any of the others?
Simon, I think that question is Honorable Joshua. Can you answer Simon's and also give some light if you have some way of collaborating with the other regulators? Honorable Joshua.
Fred, thank you, Simon Thuo. I think I know Simon Thuo, but what I would say on this is that there is already the regional forum that where the national water regulators do meet, but not regularly. It hasn't been well structured, but it's there. But it's something that I wanted also to really spearhead and see how it can be able to really find. I would commit myself flexible. And one of the support that we require, we might require from YAED, particularly the technical terms of coming up with the policy internally here as in the country, and a policy that can be able to be replicated in the other, or can be shared with other national water regulators, and they would be buying in, because WASREB has been a case study to many in terms of being a national regulator, and the way we have managed to regulate water. Where we have not been able to strike well is in the rural schemes. And this is our next frontier, where we want to lead and make sure that the country, because it's our mandate as a WASREP, to be able to give the status of water supplies in this country. And therefore, we have not been able to report on the rural water schemes because we only regulate the national, but we are getting there now. And therefore, there will be a very big potential or opportunity that it's there, where WASREP can be able to partner with the other organizations, the TNC and other people, other stakeholders, to develop this policy and replicate it in the region. And because WASREP is a partaker of the regional forum, and therefore through the WASREP national regulator here, we can be able to get into the other regional forum for regulators. So it's possible. On the other hand, in terms of the first question of Simon, Fred, I'm sure that you have more information on that, and you can help me to respond on that. Back to you, Fred.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think what Simon is asking is largely just to make sure that how do the incentives work, and do we have examples? I think what we could do is promise in the next call, because this is what Cape Town has done a lot. Simon, for the benefit, if you can get back on the same call and we listen more to Cape Town, because we got some good examples now coming from Nairobi, from Cape Town, and we're using that to model. Let's just hold the question and we'll be able to speak at the next call. So Florence, I know we have some 5 minutes before we cross. I've just put on the chat if anybody would like to make an announcement on this call. Depending on their progress, I'll give them 30 seconds each. So I just want to see if anybody has anything you would like to announce, particularly from West Africa. I don't know whether we still have Dr. Paul Olego from AMCAO on the call. And Paul, anything from AMCAO and Council of Ministers and also the African Union that you would want to announce? Not to put you on spot, but just would love to hear from our big brother there, if Paul is still on the call. Paul, are you there? I'll probably now move on to Blantyre, Malawi, the team in Malawi. Anything you'd like to announce from your area? I think Kate has left. Yeah, I see a note that Kate has already left. So, Florence, let's see what we are. Yeah, I think it's good to wrap up here. And Florence, maybe next time we can give a bit more time for people who like to make some announcements to do that. So unless Florence, you have anything, I'm passing this one back to you to cross.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Fred, and thank you to our presenters for today. And thank you, Louise, for really trying hard to be with us. Next time we'll have Louise in the next call, which will be coming up in April, together with the Nairobi Water Fund President, Eddie Joroge. So apart from that, I think if you would like to take a nature-based solution course, which will be running out by March, kindly drop me an email. You have my email and I put it in the chat for that. And in case of anything else concerning the webinars and the network, and in case you would like to make a presentation or announcement in this forum, I'll be happy to receive your emails. Thank you so much, and hope to see you all next time. I'll be sending out the webinar recording together with the presentations that have been made today. Thank you so much, and have a great afternoon and great evening. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.